بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Most welcome back to this course on the rise of the novel. We have been working together in the past 2 lectures on the background information that is necessary to our understanding of the rise of the novel, or the novel in the 18th century. And these changes and these factors range from international factors like the French Revolution and the American Revolution to local factors like the religious and industrial revolutions that took place in England in the 18th century. We covered almost all of those historical changes that left their imprint on the British novel and the rise of the British novel in the 18th century. And in this lecture we are going to deal with 2 things at the same time. We will complete those changes by looking at the Industrial Revolution, with which we ended the display and the presentation of last lecture. We will start with the Industrial Revolution to complete FAIR, F-A-I-R, French Revolution, American Revolution, Industrial Revolution, and Religious Revolution. We chose to talk about Religious Revolution last time, and we ended the class with it. Today is the last step of our journey into the changes that took place in England in the 18th century and affected the rise of the novel. The Industrial Revolution. Please bear with me, because that was the last thing we had, or the last slide we had last time. The position of people in the 18th century and how the century was regarded, and the names that were given to the 18th century. All of them, of course, come from the word stagnant. It was the age of stagnation. It will help us a lot to see the contrast, the paradoxical image. Contrast is always good, as it benefits us, helps us to understand the difference between what was before and what is the state of affairs now. Before the 18th century, yes, people felt calm, they felt happy, they felt content. They also felt stagnant, as there was no movement, no change. Remember from last time, no movement, no change at all. Okay? It was the age of stagnation. You will feel some kind of repetition, don't worry. I mean it. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm talking about those facts again, as they are very, very important to our knowledge of the difference between what was and what is. It was an age of stagnation. Now this is the age of change. It was an age of dullness and boredom, and now this is the age of excitement, the age of revolutions. Now that was the age of negativity. Everything was negative, passive. It was the age of reason, no imagination, no creativity, as I said a while ago. It was the classical age. It was the age of propriety. What is good and what is bad? This is good and this is bad. What is proper? What should be done? You know, this is only suitable to ages of stagnation and dullness and boredom and stillness. It is very hard for people to think. So they always hesitate to do things. Is this good? Is this bad? Before doing things, they keep asking themselves this way. Okay? In the 18th century, now that was before. In this slide, this is the names given to the period of time before. That is to say, roughly the 17th century. Okay? The 17th century was characterized by such matters. They belong to the 17th century. Calm, stagnant, negative, reasoned, balanced, classical. What is good? What is bad? Propriety. Jump into the 18th century with me, please. In imagination, of course. England in the 18th century. It is an age that witnessed a rebellion against the values that were prevalent in the age of Pope. So, look at the dates. 16 على طول automatically means 17th. If we say the 16th century, then this is the, if I say 1688, then this is the 17th century. And notice that Alexander Pope lived also in the 18th century, 1744. So it takes almost 100 years from the middle or towards the end of the 17th century till the middle or towards the end of the 18th century. The age of Pope is something, and what we are talking about is something else. The age of Pope is in the past. Now we are talking about what? The 18th century. The 18th century is an age that witnessed a rebellion against the values that were prevalent in the age of Pope. It's a revolt, a revolution against Pope. Pope lived in the 17th century. The 18th century rebelled against the age of Pope. A new generation of writers reacted against the self-complacency, the chilliness, and the aridity of the present age. They didn't like the coolness, the dullness, the coldness, the aridity of the previous age. Happy the man whose wish and care a few paternal acres bound. What kind of life is that? To live in a room like this, okay? And to lend a deaf ear to the world outside. To feel happy at the current state of affairs. And to refuse to change. To refuse to know more. To refuse to explore and discover and understand more. In the new century, in the 18th century, writers like Daniel Defoe, like Jonathan Swift, like Jane Austen, all such writers reacted against, rebelled against, revolted against self-complacency. Self-complacency means self-happiness, satisfaction, chilliness, becoming chill, cool, cold, reasoned, balanced, and that is why arid. Free from excitement, no suspension, no excitement, no pleasure. Dull, very dull age. They found themselves unhappy with the way in which their fathers in the previous century, in the 17th century, looked at life. With their formalism, their narrowness of sympathy, their controlling ideals. These were things that were hated by people in the 18th century. They wanted to rebel against. They dreamed of becoming more natural and spontaneous in expressing themselves in literature. We will understand more about this later, inshallah. But remember once more, I'm going to talk about the Industrial Revolution. It's an age that is different, and it became different with the revolution. Not only the Industrial Revolution, but also the religious revolution, French Revolution, American Revolution. The new age was different, of course. Notice, of course, that all those revolutions came together. That is to say, you should not understand that the French Revolution came first, and then the American Revolution, and then the Industrial Revolution, and then the Religious Revolution. No, that is not true. All these things came together, as I'm saying now. You have the start of the French Revolution, and then after some years, a couple of years, the beginning of the American Revolution. And while these two revolutions are taking place, you have to remember that there was also changes everywhere in religion and in industry. The total effect of all this, as we had before, we had before, the total effect led to the individual. Every individual felt important. Okay, we will study that as well. It was the age of change, the age of science, the age of the Industrial Revolution. I'm leading to this. I told you about the other age. It was the age of what? Happiness, contentment, stagnation. Happiness doesn't mean real happiness, it means satisfaction. People are contented. They are satisfied. They like what is going on around them. They are very lazy. They don't want change. They don't want movement. So it was the age of stagnation. Okay? But the 18th century, because of the revolutions, was the age of a difference, the age of change, the age of science. Science that told people that what the church said was not true. Do you understand? Scientific discoveries. No, the church is not at the center of the universe. The earth itself revolves around the sun. So the church itself should revolve around the sun. Then what the church said is controversial. It's questionable, arguable. You can talk about it. You can question it easily. You can use your own talent, your own reason, your own mind to see whether or not what you are saying is true, what the church is saying is true. All this because of the age of science and change and difference. It was the age of the Industrial Revolution. Lots of machines were invented, discovered, introduced to the field. And of course, every machine invented led to a better life, a different life at least. It will not be better automatically, but it would be different, changed. And production, people in the past just produced milk out of the sheep, milk, eggs, the things that can be got out of a rural life, an agricultural life, things that do not need a lot of trouble, a lot of work. Lots of production, of course. Factories, boats, trains, hospitals, telegrams, printing machines, transportation, communication, education, health. Remember when I talked about superstition in the past, if someone felt sick, suffered from a medical problem, there were no hospitals to treat him or her, no medical representatives, no medical people available, doctors, physicians, to help him out of his problem. So the only route available for people who suffered from any medical trouble was to resort to superstition. Remember the word? Superstition. Ignorant people. People who pretended they knew, but in fact they knew nothing. Do you understand? They knew nothing. Now the Industrial Revolution. It had a lot of effect, of course. Now we have to remember again, the Industrial Revolution came with factories, with machines, with lots of production. It was dependent on science. And there came boats and trains and hospitals and telegrams and printing presses and transportation, communication, education and health, right? That is the manifestation. These are the manifestations of the Industrial Revolution. What I'm interested in, I'm not going to ask you what happened in the Industrial Revolution. Tell me about factories and boats and trains and hospitals. This is not my point. My point is there a relationship between the emergence, the appearance of factories and boats and trains and all those things, and the improvements in healthcare and in education and so on? Is there a relationship between all this and people? That is my own point of view. That is my major concern, you know, to see the effects of all such matters on man, on the family. Understand? Yes, the Industrial Revolution had its effect on health, because at the very beginning, factories and machines and engines produced pollution, smoke, as you saw in the picture of a lot of factories producing smoke and pollution. So the health of people got affected very much. In the field of the family also was affected. Women began to go to work at factories for a very long period of time, starting from 8 in the morning until 12 at night. The family went to work, women went to work, children went to work, so there was no time at which members of the family could sit together and discuss matters and laugh and exchange opinions, and for children to get instructed and taught and corrected and improved. No. And that is why the family disintegrated. It suffered. The Industrial Revolution had two weapons. It was a double-edged weapon. It was good and bad at the same time. Good because it made the whole world change. The pace quickened. Life became quicker and faster. The stagnation of the past has come to a standstill. No stagnation anymore. No, it is a world of change and movement and improvements. The result of all these improvements will appear later in the 19th century, at the end of the 19th century. The result, the fruits of the Industrial Revolution, as we have now, air conditioning, hospitals, first-rate hospitals, first-rate religious institutions like King Faisal University, for example. You know, all the facilities that you have. But this is what we enjoy now. You have the fruits, the pleasures of all those changes now. But at the start of the Industrial Revolution, at the start of the century, it was not like that. Do you understand? So there was suffering, there were problems, lack of interest in education, because everyone went to work. So now we are talking about the Industrial Revolution from one perspective, from one point of view. What is that? It is the passive effect of the Industrial Revolution upon people. Pollution, smoke, the work of women, the work of children, family disintegration, no education, simply because everyone went to work at factories. How could children go to schools? How could students go to universities? Originally there were no schools and universities. They began to be built. They began to be widespread little by little. But at the start, there was no time, there was no money, so they went to work in order to get money to support themselves. The false and dogmatic ideas spread in educational institutions, reason versus imagination. Still we suffer from the problems of the 17th century, and they are beginning to break down. They are beginning to vanish and disappear, but it has to take some time. Until improvements are obvious and visible and real and people feel them, there will be suffering. I hinted at a problem in the second lecture when I talked about the church and the earth and the sun and forgiveness and so on. Now we are in front of a real problem. What is that problem? The clash between science and religion. Why is there a clash? Because in the past people stopped thinking. They never thought. They trusted the church. They trusted what the church said, you know. Okay. Now, with improvements in science, with the Industrial Revolution, the power of the church became weaker and weaker. The influence of the church over people was not the same influence that we had in the past. Science proved that the earth revolves around the sun. Science proved that that religious institution, the church, was wrong in convincing people that it was the center of the universe. Science told people that they count, they are important. So the problem now is that clash between science and religion. People did not feel comfortable anymore at religion, at the church, and that is why we begin to have something called secularism. A drift away, a movement away from religion. Religion is okay. People in England respected religion, okay, but they did not respect the church. The church misled them. They felt that man is the most important value on earth, the individual is the most important value, and the more you ignore religion, the better. Materialism, secularism and materialism are almost the same thing. People lost all trust in religion and began to seek fulfillment of their desires and their needs, to feel and to get convinced at what they could see, what they could touch, what they could feel with their hands, money, pleasures, trips, exploration. What is tangible? What is in front of them? Not what you tell them about in the future when they die. Religion in general is understood to be something that talks about the unknown, like the hereafter. As Muslims, you could easily believe in that. Also as Christians, but that was for Christians at the time before the Industrial Revolution and before the modern ages. With the modern ages, there was a problem, a clash between science and religion. We will discover that in our study of the novel, inshallah. Okay? Some of the passive effects of the Industrial Revolution, again, it had demerits, it had disadvantages, like environmental pollution, we said that, poor health conditions at the start of the century, materialism, as people lost interest in spiritualism, lack of interest in education, work of women and children, the weakness of family structure, poverty of some classes of people, hunger, diseases, death. All these are the problems people suffered from because of the Industrial Revolution. They left the 17th century behind them. They went to factories, they traveled, they moved from the city to the country, from the village to the countryside, to the city, in order to get in contact with real life, to understand real life, to get in contact with people from other cities and other towns. The result, initially, is suffering, of course. Women worked, children worked, hunger, diseases, and deaths. But man felt important. Man felt that he could achieve himself, working, having money, supporting oneself. We move now to we finished the Industrial Revolution, we move to the empire. A new concept which will be of vital importance to us when we study the novel Robinson Crusoe, inshallah. What is empire? Okay. At the end of the 18th century, at the end of the 17th and the beginning of the 18th century, England became larger and larger. It invaded other countries. It occupied other nations and other countries all over the whole world. If you look at the map of the world, England is just a small place here on the map of the world. You understand? But with the spread of knowledge and discoveries and expansion, England grew and grew and went to England and went to India and went to Egypt and went to Nigeria and South Africa and Australia and Canada and even America itself. It became a huge empire. It is the empire all over which the sun never sets. The sun is here, then this is England. The sun is here, this is England. England, everywhere. Wherever there is the sun, there is England. So it is called the empire over which the sun never set. England became a huge superpower, the only superpower actually at that time, with France, of course. It occupied many countries all over the whole world. It became the empire over which the sun never sets. You always have a sun under British sovereignty. There was huge expansion and geographical discoveries all the time. They discover new land, Newfoundland, New Zealand, for example, New Guinea, Australia, Canada, America. People from England, that was the result. We're not studying, ladies and gentlemen, we're not studying all this because, I repeat, because it's history. No, because it had an effect. What is the effect of all this on men in England? People from England, men and women, felt very important and very powerful because they belong to a nation that is an empire. They belong to a nation that has spread all over the whole world. They belong to a nation that is a superpower. So people from England felt very important. Every man and woman felt the desire to roam the globe, to travel, to discover, to explore new lands. Individuals preferred their own good. Everyone looked at oneself. What is important to me? What is good to me? They wanted to satisfy their desires for more money, more knowledge, more pleasure. And that is why I call it individualism. The other slide, the previous slide, is called the empire. The empire over which the sun never sets. That is England. People from the empire felt very important, and that is why we move to something called the individual or individualism. Every man and woman felt important. They needed to travel and explore. Individuals preferred their own good, and they wanted to satisfy their desires for more money, more knowledge, more pleasure. When we read the novel Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe, we will see Robinson, the character described throughout the novel. Even the novel itself is called Robinson Crusoe. It's a novel about travel. It's a novel about knowledge, about pleasure, about money. All this will be found in the novel. Every individual wanted to achieve himself and lost interest gradually in every other individual. In the novel, we will see Robinson Crusoe unable to feel any interest at all in any other people, only interested in himself. You understand? Let us now read the definition of individualism. What is individualism? Let us read it now. It is the moral stance, political philosophy, ideology, or social outlook. It's a belief. That is to say, it's a belief. The belief that stresses the moral worth of the individual. The most important thing about the definition of the individual is that it talks about the moral worth of the individual. The individual is worthy. The individual is respectable. Individuals promote the exercise of one's goals and desires, and so value independence. Man wants to be independent. For example, Robinson Crusoe has a relationship to his father and mother, but he wants to feel independent. He doesn't like to be always controlled by his parents. No, he wants independence and self-reliance, while opposing most external interference upon one's own interests, whether by society, family, or any other group or institution. That is individualism. No effect upon the individual through father, mother, society, or any other institution. Man felt important. With all this in our minds, we come to the novel. So how did the novel rise? It arose, it came into being out of all those things. People began to feel excited about their own desires, and they got affected by all those revolutions. We reach individualism. So the novel came as the desire of the individual grew better and stronger. The desire to be self-confident, the desire to achieve more pleasure and more knowledge and more money. What is the definition of the novel? Please memorize this. The definition of the novel is, you complete the definition by memorizing this: a fictional prose narrative of considerable length. I will explain that. A fictional prose narrative of considerable length, typically having a plot that is unfolded by the actions, speech, and thoughts of the characters. The literary genres represented by novels, don't worry about this, the novel. A fictional prose narrative of considerable length, this is the definition of the novel. It's a narrative, it's a story, and it is in prose. It is not poetry. You understand? It is not musical as poetry is. And it is fictional. It is not like a piece of journalism. It's not an article that you read in the newspaper. No, it's a story in prose, not in poetry, and it has to be fictional, that is to say imaginary. It doesn't depend on facts as much as it depends on fiction, on the imagination. And it has to be of a certain length. It is long. It is not short. It is not a short story. It is not a poem. It is not one page. Considerable length, about 250 pages. The novel is about 250 pages. We can actually add that here. About 250 pages in length. Understand? How long approximately is the novel? It is about 250 pages in length. Is it one page? No. Is it 2 pages? No. Is it a poem? No. Does it have music? Not like poetry. Do you understand? Please pay attention to all that I'm saying now, because there can be questions like this. Is the novel true or false? The novel can be 200 pages. 2 pages. False. The novel can be 250 pages. Correct. The novel can be written in poetry, in verse. No, it has to be written in prose. The novel is factual, not fictional. Wrong. It is fictional. Do you understand? The novel is a worldwide cultural instrument which helped redefine the time and space where we live, the way we speak and talk, how we feel, what we do. It came in order to cover all those areas of knowledge. It encompassed many different subgenres. It is always in search of a definition, battled with other genres from the very beginning. Don't worry about those things. The slides that I just go through should not occupy a lot of your attention. You just read them for your own knowledge, as I'm saying. Also this, the same thing. But here I'm giving you more definitions of the novel for your knowledge as well. I'm not going to ask you for more than one definition, just one definition. And the easiest of them is this. The easiest one, the most practical definition is this: a fictional prose narrative of considerable length. You can easily memorize this. Fictional prose narrative of considerable length. That's all I'm interested in. These are other definitions. A novel comes from the French word nouvelle and Italian novella. It is an extended, generally fictional narrative in prose. Okay? Until the 18th century, the novel referred specifically to short fictions of love and intrigue, as opposed to romances, which were epic length works. I would like you to look at the word novel itself. What is novel? Novel means, we'll come back to the word novel. Keep it in mind, I will talk about it now. Okay? This is another definition, and this is also another definition by Clara Reeve. in a book called The Progress of Romance that she wrote in the year 1785. According to Clara Reeve, the novel is a picture of real life and manners, and this is a very good definition as well, and of the time in which it is written. The romance is something else. The novel is a picture of real life and manners and of the time in which it is written. Do you understand? I said that we're going to talk about the word novel. Okay? The word novel will be talked about right now, but before the goal of the novel, let me tell you about my idea of the word novel. Novel means new. New, unfamiliar, unacceptable. You understand? It comes from the word novelty. Various meanings of the term novel. The word novel itself means new. If you look it up in the dictionary, one of the meanings of the word novel as an adjective. As an adjective, it means new. To people living in the 18th century, it also meant unfamiliar, unacceptable. It was a novelty as a noun. As a noun, it means novelty, that is to say, something that is not welcome by people, bid'ah, because it is totally new. You understand? And that is why people did not like the novel at first. And this will be our story for next time, inshallah. Why did the novel start? Because of the changes that we talked about, the 4 revolutions and the political scene, and the empire. All the previous things led to the rise of the novel. Okay, also because of the restoration of monarchy, appearance of periodicals or magazines, articles in magazines, and the magazines, those periodicals gave writers the chance to publish their novels every other week or so. They would publish a part of the novel. It was a chance for them to publish themselves. Before that time, there were no periodicals. It was not possible. It was not easy for writers to publish their novels. The middle class also came into being. In the past, there was either the upper class or the lower class. People in power and people living in the fields. Now, the middle class came into being, and that was the group of people that could read, that could follow, that could be interested in the novel. They had some time, leisure time, especially women, growing audience of literate women who knew how to read and write. They had much time to devote to the reading of novels. If you look at this title count in the 18th century, see, this is the beginning of the 18th century. The titles from the year 1600 until the year 1799, it arose and arose. It began like this in the 17th century. There were no titles almost published at the beginning of the 17th century. People found nothing to read except a few titles, but it grew rapidly like this until you reach the year 1799, the end of the 18th century. Many books were published, especially the novel. So the novel was new. It was gradually increasing like this in number, in titles, in publication. The same thing here, title count. Okay? It goes onward and onward like this. When did the novel start? In the first half of the 18th century in England, first half of the 18th century. Before the 18th century, of course, there were some attempts in the 17th century, some attempts at writing the novel. Arcadia by Philip Sidney, Oronoco by Aphra Behn, The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Those titles were published, as you can see, in the 17th century. These titles were a logical introduction to the novel in the 18th century, but they are not called proper novels. Perhaps Aphra Behn's Oronoco is the first title to be published as a novel, but that was in the 17th century. I have given you in this lecture something about the Industrial Revolution as one of the most important factors leading to the emergence of the novel. And now we talked about the definition of the novel, some definitions. I said that the most important, the easiest one of them is that one, a narrative, a prose narrative, a fictional prose narrative of considerable length. And then finally we came to the fact that the novel was new and unfamiliar and unacceptable. And then we said that the novel started at the end of the 17th century and the beginning of the 18th century, saying that Oronoco by Aphra Behn is the title that is considered the first novel in English. Next time, inshallah, we'll be dealing with the features of the novel, the nature of the novel in the 18th century, before we take Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. It has been a pleasure talking to you about these background pieces of information about the 18th century. I'm looking forward to studying the novel itself, which will be fun, inshallah. You will like it much more than you, I'm sure, like the first introductory lectures. Thank you very much. Have a very good time, and until we see you next time, have a very nice time. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.